Welcome, everyone. So I'm back with Ashley, and we're going to be doing things a little different today. So she's going to be interviewing me about my life and kind of what brought me to my spiritual awakening and everything that I do today. So I'll let Ashley take it away.
Perfect. So we thought it would be so nice for you guys to get to know Anne on a different level. I have known her for more than half of my life. And thinking back to teenage Anne and young adulthood Anne and then like new motherhood Anne and the Anne that she is now. She has gone through so many different transitions and um if you knew her 15, 20 years ago to who she is now, you would have no idea that she is the same person, really. So we thought it'd be nice to just give you guys a glimpse of that and what started her spiritual awakening and how she got to be the amazing healer and magic worker that she is today. So I wanted to start. If you could just tell us a little bit about your childhood, what life was like for little Anne, where did you grow up, that sort of thing.
Yeah. So I grew up in Slave Lake, Alberta, which is a small town north of Edmonton. And I have three half sisters, two from my dad who never lived with me. They lived in Saskatchewan. And then from my mom, she lived with me till I was about probably five or six. And a lot of the time it felt like I was an only child. Um, yeah, I look back and I feel like I had a lot of time outside. I love nature. I lived across from a park, so I was always out in the trees, like building forts and just being at the park. And we'd go camping a lot, so a lot of time spent at the beach. Looking back, I'm really grateful that I grew up somewhere by the water. I definitely didn't appreciate it back then. I was actually a little bit of a tomboy in those earlier years. Most of my cousins and my friends, family friends, were boys. So I just thought I was one of the boys and I wasn't scared to get messy. And it wasn't until I started school that I started to have friends that were girls. So yeah, it was, it had its challenges. I definitely don't want to touch on family stuff, just out of respect for my parents, but there was definitely a lot of, it was the 90s. Things were different back then.
Things were so different back then.
Yeah, it was, I would say I probably didn't always feel safe at home. And I feel like that's where my introvertedness came from and my love for animals. I was always kind of like in my room, being creative, drawing, hanging out with my cat. So yeah, I feel like, yeah, looking back, there was good moments and tough moments as well.
Mhm. Um, and so did you live in Slave Lake essentially your whole life?
I did. Yeah, I
Okay.
didn't move until the first time I moved, I was 18 and I moved to
Okay.
Central Alberta for like 4 months.
Okay. Okay. So, I knew you as a teenager because we went to school together. What was teenage Anne like?
Oh gosh. A hot mess, to be honest.
I feel like
Um,
everyone could probably attest to that as a teenager.
yeah, like growing up in Slave Lake, there was a lot of drinking, underage drinking. So I feel like I started drinking quite early on. I think the first time I got drunk, I was like 12, which is really sad looking back, you
Okay.
know. And yeah, just a lot of lack of self-worth, I guess, which would get me in situations, maybe looking for attention or love from the wrong people. Yeah, I was a little bit promiscuous at that time. wasn't a good friend. I mean, I tried my best, but there was definitely moments when alcohol was involved that I made bad decisions. I was in a series of unhealthy relationships during that time, which taught me a lot, but also impacted my self-worth, I would say.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was a little bit wild. I would go out a lot. Um, yeah, just very superficial, I guess, like love shopping, loved just hanging out with friends, which I guess is like that's the time to do it when you're a teenager.
100%. And I feel like that was very normal.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was a
Time
very
for it.
normal thing, I think, for us. Um, yeah, that because I mean, yeah, that I was all of those things also. Right?
It's probably not as bad,
I
but
think
yeah.
that's just to kind of, and also like I feel like, parents in the 90s and early 2000s were also very different than
Mhm.
parents now even, right?
Yeah.
Like
I feel like, oh, sorry.
no, go ahead.
Oh yeah, I was just gonna say my parents like would leave me alone too on weekends and like of course I would get up to no good.
That's so crazy. My parents rarely left me alone.
Yeah, I mean probably good.
I still got up to no good, but I was rarely left alone. It's probably why. Um, so as a child, or in your early teenage years, um, were you still intuitive? Did you still have that gift?
So when I was young, like probably 4 on, like as early as I can remember, I was very intuitive. Like I used to be able to see spirit back then.
Mm-hmm.
And I would get scared because they were earthbound spirits. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and then of course my parents, like well-meaning, would be like, that's not real, it's in your head. So then you question what you're seeing, right? And then I remember too,
Mm-hmm.
growing up, my grandma lived like she had about an acre and a half of property, and at the end of her yard there was a graveyard.
Mm-hmm.
I would always stay at her place and would be able to sense spirits kind of coming in and out of the house and around the house. So, yeah, I felt like I didn't really have the tools to deal with that or even really realize fully what I was experiencing. I was
Mm-hmm.
very like, thankfully, my parents or my mom would always talk about angels. If I was ever scared, she would tell me to like pray to God or angels and ask for help. So I always did feel supported by them. Um, but yeah, so I definitely did. And then I do feel like looking back in my teenage years, that's probably why, well, one of the reasons I turned to alcohol and some drugs is because I was so sensitive. Like I could feel everyone's energy around me. I feel like I was always like that as a kid too, like very shy. And I just like hide behind my mom because she was my safe space.
Mm-hmm.
So growing up, when I became a teenager, like alcohol and drugs would turn that down. And yeah, I
Yeah.
don't want to say like I was a drug addict. I wasn't, but definitely
No, no. Yeah.
did in my day, with, more natural type drugs. And
Yeah.
then, yeah, and then in teenage years, so even though I wouldn't feel things as much. I guess like the alcohol would kind of turn down my sensitivity, but it would also turn up my intuition. So I remember there was times like I was at a party and my friend lost her cell phone,
Mm-hmm.
drunk, and I just like walked in the middle of a field and just like picked up her phone. There was like no light or anything, and I'm like, here it is. And then yeah, so like weird things like that. And then I would just
Yeah.
be like, haha, I'm psychic, and like um
Wild.
I know. And then the other time we were going back to a friend's house and I don't know where he was, but he wasn't there and we had permission to go to his house. But anyways, so he had a lock, like a door code on the garage,
Yeah.
and we forgot what it was. And I was just like looked at it and I did the number and it opened.
What?
I know. So just like weird things like that were like really like unexplainable, but
Yeah,
also I like knew that I had these gifts, I guess, on some level.
amazing.
Yeah.
And it's funny, right? When you look back and then you're like, haha, I'm psychic, right? Like, because you really in that moment didn't know what was going on, right?
Right.
Yeah,
But
I
it's
love
yeah,
that.
it's always something I knew. Like I don't want to name names, but you know who I
Yeah,
dated in the past.
yeah,
And there was one boyfriend, every time he cheated on me, I just knew.
yeah,
Like before I was ever told, I just knew.
yeah.
And I'd be like going to sleep and I'd be like, oh, he cheated on me. And yeah,
Insane.
like those gut instincts were always there.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Do you think that they've just gotten stronger like as time has gone on?
I feel like I just know how to use it.
Okay.
Like I know how to use it properly. I meditate every day. I practice every
Hmm.
day where before it was just there and it would
Right.
just randomly show up when I needed it and
Right.
not but yeah, even like thinking back to childhood, I got lost once when we were camping.
Okay.
I was bike riding with a group of friends and like the older kids were supposed to be watching me and I was just like head in the clouds, kind of trailed behind. And then they took off without me and I don't
Yeah.
think they realized I was gone. But anyways, so then I was lost and scared and crying because like you know how confusing campsites can be.
Yes.
And then so I was crying and then I just felt like I was meant to go up this hill, even though it was like all bush.
Yeah.
So I started like pushing my bike up this hill and then my bike got too heavy. So I just left it and I started walking up the hill and I
Oh
saw
my
this like
gosh.
golden, like the most beautiful thing. I can still remember it to this day, this
Yeah.
beautiful golden figure. And it was small, like probably maybe this big. And it pointed up and like was telling me keep going up. And then
Yeah.
as I walked up over the hill, my friend was there calling my name, waiting for me.
Wow.
I know. So yeah, they've always like my guides, my angels have always been there to support me.
Hmm.
I've also had some pretty like dark times as a teenager, just going through things with my parents. And I think, alcohol not helping,
Hmm.
depression and stuff. And
Yeah.
always, yeah, I've had a couple moments in life where they were like, you need to be here. You're here for a bigger reason. Like, keep
Yeah.
going. I know it, oh, I'm gonna cry. Like, yeah, just that voice telling me, I know it's hard, but you're here for a reason and everything's gonna be okay. So
Oh, that's so beautiful. Now I'm gonna cry. I'm gonna cry. Oh, that's so like how amazing that you were able to tap into that and then overcome, right? Those things because there's so many like children and teenagers who aren't able to overcome that. We were also really lucky that we grew up without Facebook.
mhm.
We grew up without social media. Um, you didn't really text back then, like, right? We in that sense, I feel like we are so lucky that we didn't have we like I feel like being a teenager as it is already has so many like pressures and all of that stuff that how lucky are we that we didn't have social media? I can't even imagine social media like in the 90s or early
I
2000s,
know. I couldn't imagine.
right?
Like even just the bullying at school or when you would
Hmm.
go out. Like I remember there would be a new rumor about me every week. And there would be times like some of it was warranted, sure, but there would be times where I would be home all weekend and I'd come to school and there'd be a new rumor about me. So I couldn't even imagine like having social media on top of.
Right? Yeah.
Mhm.
Um, okay. What about when you became a mom? Um, how did motherhood change um change any parts of you or did it open you up spiritually in a different way?
Yeah. If you don't mind, I feel like we're skipping over a really important part.
Oh, absolutely. Sorry, I'm just going through
Oh
my like
no.
little
Yeah,
list.
no, no, no. I just feel like this will help, like just bring some background.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
once I finally moved, it took a couple times. Like I moved to Vancouver for almost half a year, and that was amazing. And then that really helps with my confidence too, and just helped me believe like anything's possible. And it also
Hmm.
just, I think that at that point, I was watching a lot of Oprah. I just went through another bad breakup. And this was when Oprah was like started with her spiritual phase and bringing
Yes,
on
yes.
this. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was starting to use manifestation, and I got myself to Vancouver, and it was incredible. And that really helped with just my confidence of like anything's possible. And then again, another crazy story about intuition. So I was there and like it was amazing, but also some things weren't working out. But I just had this gut feeling that something was going to happen in my family and I needed to go home. And I couldn't explain it. I just knew. And I was sad, obviously, because I was like, what? I just got here. Like, I'm living my dream life, going to art school, like all the things. But yeah, this gut feeling wouldn't go away. So I made the decision to move home. And like probably not even a month after, my cousin committed suicide. So it's just crazy when you listen to your gut. And I feel like I was truly meant to be home and be there for my family and my aunt. So yeah, so I moved home for a brief period. I was doing online studies and then I moved to Edmonton. And I feel like that really just helped me grow as a person. Like for the first time in a long time, I lived by myself at first, and I just had so much freedom to do what I wanted and to hang out with who I wanted and just to really discover who I am as a person.
Yeah.
Um, I still would go out, but it was more like at that point in life, like I had a really good group of like healthy friends who were inspiring. And like my one friend I met, she was like a dual citizen and she would go to California a lot. So it was just like, I don't know, it was fun. And I was more independent and yeah, I feel like I really found myself. I would use visualization, I would use affirmations. Because yeah, there was a lot of healing. Like I was off and on in a relationship for many years. And then when I moved to Edmonton, it was like when I finally ended it for good. So it was really empowering time of my life. So yeah, teenage years were a hot mess. College years
Thank
were
you. Thank you. Thank you
yeah.
for sharing that. I had college in there, but I don't know why I skipped to motherhood. And then I think I was going to go back to college, but no,
Yeah.
that, yeah, that, okay. And
And
then how did you find your husband?
yeah, so we are both from Slave Lake as well. And we were both going to the same college. So we would just kind of randomly see each other.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. And yeah, so it was always like I was in a relationship or he was in a relationship. I felt like there was always a connection there. But yeah, at one point we were just both single. So he asked me out and we went to the water park at West End and went for dinner. And we were having this dinner, just talking about our life. And like, you know me, like I was always quite shy and
Hmm.
quiet with especially guys. Um, so I was like really opening up with him and I felt like comfortable immediately, which is funny because we went on a date when I was probably like 15 or 16. And it was like the worst date ever. I don't think I even said more than two words. And his sister and I were like good friends at the time. So I was like texting her and I'd like run upstairs to go see her. Like it was like the worst date ever.
Oh
So
my God, that's so funny.
I know. So the fact that we were able to reconnect and like I was able to be so open was, yeah, pretty neat. And then just a lot of our like values and what we wanted out of life lined up, like with
Hmm.
like wanting to start a family young and travel and like adventure and just yeah, a lot of our things just matched up. And, you know, I don't think looking back, we were like the soul connection was there, but there was still a lot of growth for both of us. Like we were young. I was 22 when we started dating. So like looking back, I was a baby, but that connection was there. So I feel like that's kind of what kept us going. Wasn't always smooth sailing at the start, but I think once we decided like this is serious and we both want this, that's kind of when, yeah, things moved pretty quick. Like we got engaged a year and a half after dating, if
And then
that.
you got married, like how long was your engagement?
2 years, because I
Okay,
did
okay.
want to wait. I was like, okay, this is moving quite quickly because I had plans to move to BC after I was done college, and then we
Right.
moved in together, and then like a couple months later got engaged. So I was like, hey, this
Mm-hmm.
is moving quickly. I want to just, you know, take my time
Mm-hmm.
with it. So yeah, we did wait a couple years before we got married, and then
Okay.
I was 9 weeks pregnant during our wedding, which wasn't like not, I don't want to say it wasn't planned because we weren't not like we were trying, but we did
Mm-hmm.
want to take a little break before the wedding just so
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, so I was 24 when I was pregnant with my first.
Okay. Yes. And then because we had our kids very close together, our first very close
Mhm.
together, you and
Yeah.
I. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, let me go back here.
Yeah. So I guess if you want, because I feel like I remember your question, just like how motherhood changed
Yeah,
me.
so how that's
Yeah.
what I was going back to. So how did motherhood, did it open you up in a sense, or you know, was your like intuition heightened, or um if you could share a little bit.
Yeah. Um, yeah, so much. So I feel like even though I was working on myself at that point, I still wasn't in a great place because we moved to Lloydminster and we had
Mm-hmm.
no family or friends around. We moved because he was supposed to be home more with his work, but that wasn't the case. So a lot of the time I was just alone at home, not knowing anyone, pregnant. Like, yeah, it was challenging. And then my pregnancy overall was pretty good. I realized though, like how much I relied on certain things, like even just taking like a Gravol or a Benadryl to help me sleep. Because I had like underlying
Okay.
issues that I didn't deal with, like anxiety.
Yeah.
But when you're pregnant, you can't do that, right? You're just left to
Yeah.
your own devices. And that's kind of when I really started to turn to holistic methods. So I started like using essential oils and meditating because I remember I just had so much anxiety. And I think it was just fear again of being alone, being a first time mom. I was so young. I didn't feel like I had much support.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I started meditating. After I went into early labor, I was on these really strong antibiotics, and my immune system, just like my whole energy was down. So I went to go get Reiki, and this was the second time I got Reiki. Okay, come back to this question, but the first time I want to share as well because it was amazing. But yeah, so this was the second time I got Reiki, and just because I was kind of at a loss of like I don't know what else to do at this point to help me.
Mm-hmm.
So that brought a lot of clarity. And then I again started just kind of feeling like myself, like that anxiety would melt away. So I think I saw her twice before my son was born. And his birth was just so many lessons. Um, I was induced and I didn't want to be induced, and my intuition, my gut was screaming at me not to, like for them to break my waters. But the doctor was not listening to my wishes and putting a lot of fear and pressure on me. So yeah, there was that. And then when he was born, it was like the trauma of his birth. I ended up with a C-section, and it was almost like I don't know. I was going through so much. I can look back and see that I needed and both he needed all of it because it made me realize what was working and what wasn't. And I had to let go of that fear and I needed to open my heart and I needed to be aligned with my soul. And even though, like I said, at this point, I was already reading spiritual books, I was practicing affirmations, meditating, etc. That piece that was missing was that self-love and that connection to my soul. So after, going through his birth and everything that transpired after, I had a really slow healing, a lot of infections. Yeah, our life kind of fell apart. My husband got laid off. We had to move in with my parents. Like it felt like I feel I know what I'm thankful because I can look back and know that all of those hard times brought me to where I am today. But I also feel like I didn't get to enjoy being a new mom because there was so much chaos and just trauma from trying to heal. And then as like we finally felt like we were getting the hang of this new parenting thing. And then it was like the rug got pulled out from under us and he got laid off. And then I had to go move in back to Slave Lake with my parents, which was a whole nother you can imagine being
Yeah.
trying to live with your parents. So yeah, it was a lot, but also I'm thankful because it brought me to where I am today. And there was a lot of lessons and growth. And I feel like his little soul was like, Mom, I need you to be more for me. And yeah, I had to go through some hard times. I, experienced postpartum symptoms, which looking back, I can see why there was a lot going on at that time. But that led me to taking my Reiki and opening my business and taking meditation and everything else I've done since.
So like so many that I feel like motherhood is like what kind of like catapulted you into all of like the spiritual things,
Yeah, I feel
right?
like if I didn't have it, I don't know where I would be, to be honest, because everything, and again, there's a time and a place for Western medicine, but everything they were suggesting or recommending just wasn't working. And like a lot of my symptoms and experiences were unexplainable. Like you said, like my intuition and my sensitivity was heightened, which I think happens for all mothers, right? Like it's a natural response of being a mom because you're supposed to protect your baby. So I remember just like nurses coming in the room and I would like be able to know how they were feeling and what their thoughts were. And like, just, yeah, it was just like my intuition was just cranked up as well as my sensitivity. So, yeah, it definitely, made me, I feel like I've had little mini awakenings throughout my life, but that was definitely a big one that changed my life completely.
Right. So you said that you wanted to touch on your very first Reiki session. So if you want to tell us a little bit about that, maybe even if you want to like just share with us, kind of what is Reiki for people who don't really know or really understand, just so we can get a good glimpse of it.
Yeah. So Reiki is a type of energy healing. So essentially the practitioner connects to source energy, which we're all made of. But they're just able to channel it because they've been attuned to the Reiki energy. And then the Reiki comes out through the palms, it goes through the crown into the heart and out through the palms into the recipient. So it just helps you release any blockages you may experience in the body, opens the chakras. And yeah, I remember the first time I heard about it, I was probably 17 or 18. And my boss that I was working for told me about it. And I remember just thinking it sounded so cool. And it was more like the psychic, like the intuitive stuff that caught my eye. So I was going through a bad breakup. I don't know how many times I've said this, but um, I decided to reach out and go to her for a session. And it felt neat, but I remember just like my mind was overactive at that time. And yeah, so I could feel things, but just like probably my anxiety got in the way of me really enjoying it. But near the end, she said, "Your heart's broken, but you're gonna be okay. There's gonna be one more relationship after this that's kind of whatever, it won't be anything serious.
Mhm.
And then the one after that is the one. That's your soulmate." And I remember just like wanting to believe her, but not really believing her. And then, yeah, that's exactly how it happened. I had like one boyfriend in college, and
Yeah.
then I started dating my husband. So, yeah, that was crazy. And then another thing she said that I still remember till this day is this. She's like, "You've had many lifetimes, but this is the lifetime where you get it right and you find your bliss."
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so that's where the name of my first business, Bliss Health,
Mm-hmm.
came from. Because yeah, that always just stuck with me.
Yeah. Ooh,
Mhm.
that gave me like little like goosebumps. Oh, I
Yeah,
love that.
and it's funny, well, not funny, but I remember after that, like, kind of making jokes, which again, this was my ego, but I'd be like,
Mm-hmm.
"Oh, the crazy psychic lady or the crazy Reiki lady," and then I'd always talk about it when I was drinking, like, with friends, and then
Yeah.
we're just, like, knowing I wanted to take it, but
Yeah.
being enslaved, like, not really knowing, like, how to take it, especially back then, it wasn't as well known as it is today.
Yeah.
So yeah, those little seeds were there, which looking back is pretty neat.
That's so cool. I don't
Mhm.
even know that I remember my first Reiki session. I mean, I've had so many at this point, but I'm trying to think. Maybe, maybe when I worked at the salon, I think I might. I think we had like a Reiki practitioner there, I think. And I that it was, that is it. And then I've seen her numerous times after that, but um I'd have to like actually like sit with it and go back, but I do remember it being like somewhat profound, right?
Mhm.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Um, okay, so are you able to kind of pinpoint what your spiritual awakening was like? Like, did you wake up one morning and were just like, okay, this is what I'm doing, and then just like changed your entire life? Or was
No.
it, because I mean, we know that like spiritual awakenings are very are not linear at all. They're very like ups and downs with ebbs and flows. And so was there ever a moment where you were just like, okay, this is it. This is what I'm doing.
Not I feel like the true spiritual awakening was the rock bottom.
Okay.
And there was a lot of ups and downs that got me to that point. But I just remember having this breaking point. I was just after my son was born, I had so
Mhm.
much inflammation and pain in my body for like months and months and months. And I was eating healthy. I was like doing yoga every day, like trying everything and anything.
Mhm.
Um, and I remember just like having this F you God moment, like lying on the floor, just crying because I couldn't sleep. I was in so much pain, and just being like, "God, I can't do this. Like, I don't know what you want from me, but I cannot keep living this way.
Yeah.
I'm I'm a new mom. I just want to enjoy my son and not have to feel pain every day. And I'm like, just show me what you want me to do."
Mhm.
So I feel like after that, like it was just like a deep surrender.
Yeah.
And again, it was just like, I didn't feel like there was anything else I could do. Like I was going to counseling, I was doing all these holistic modalities, like I would kind of find some relief, but then something else would happen and then I would be in pain again. So after that, it was just like, okay, you need to go. I remember my intuition was so strong though, like so strong. It was like, you need to go to Lloydminster. I was in Fort Saskatchewan at the time, and you need
Mm-hmm.
to go sit with your, like my Reiki practitioner, and she's gonna help you. And I remember just like a random, like my husband was at work and I just took my son and me to Lloydminster for like 2.5 hour drive to just go there. And she just like shared all so much information with me about like intuition and working with spirit and like all these things. So she's like, I feel like you, or I don't know if she said it or I said it, but it was decided then like I need to take Reiki.
Yeah.
So like next time you have a class, let me know. So then once that happened, it was like the switch.
Okay. Yeah.
I remember just like it just turned everything up and it like dropped all of my fear. I was staying at a friend's grandma's house, like a childhood friend's grandma's
Mm-hmm.
house. And I remember just like walking back in from my class and just like they were having some family dynamics going on at that time. Her grandma was, yeah, I don't need to share personal stuff, but there was something going on. And I just remember knowing like, hey, this is the best decision that they're making. And I could see who was sharing from their heart and who
Yeah.
wasn't. And like just this deep knowing. And then I finished my level 1 and level 2 over the weekend and I came home and I remember Luke just saying it was like a ball of sunshine just walked through the door. Like I was a completely different person and I felt different and yeah, but yeah, looking back, that was probably the point. And there was a lot of healing. Like once you get attuned to Reiki, it's called like a 20-day cycle of
Mm-hmm.
healing. So it brings up a lot of things. And I had a lot of memories from my childhood that I buried, didn't even know that happened. That was really hard to deal with. Um, but yeah, so it wasn't like it was pretty, it was still hard at this time.
Yeah.
But it was clearing the chakras, clearing the body, clearing the emotions, so I could be more aligned with my soul and live from that place.
Yeah.
Um, and then once I started, I didn't have like any intention of doing Reiki other than for my family
Right.
and
Yeah.
myself. But once I started practicing on friends and family, and like there's a couple that were going through a hard time as well during that time, I just saw how much it helped in the transformation
Yeah.
that I just knew I had to share it. And I was like so insecure at that point of time. Like I couldn't even imagine opening a business, but like I just felt like spirit
Yeah.
was just like pushing me and was like, you need to do this. And like
Yeah.
just like boom, 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 everything happened. And I opened up and like people would come and I wouldn't even know them. And like
Yeah.
it was crazy. So
Oh, I love that. I feel like definitely was like not one of the first people, but definitely one of, I remember you like opening up about it and that you were offering um like sessions and things like that. And I remember that. And I remember because I feel like I started coming to you for Reiki, even distance Reiki, probably pretty early on.
yeah, like definitely
Yeah.
that year. I feel like you
I
were
yeah,
one of
I
my
feel like
biggest
that
supporters.
too. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, thank you. I appreciate
You're welcome. Now I've been coming to you for 10 years,
it. Yeah, isn't
right?
that crazy?
I know. Isn't
Yeah,
that wild?
doesn't feel that long at all.
Hey, right.
Yeah. Like it feels like maybe 4 years ago. I just
I know,
opened
but if
my
you
business.
even like think back to like 10 years ago when you took that initial, Reiki to all of the things that you have mastered in those 10 years, right?
Yeah.
Is amazing. And you're
Yeah.
always continuing your education. You're always like, I'm trying this. So if you ever want to try this modality, let me know. Right? Like, so I think it's amazing.
I know. Yeah.
I
It's
think
like
that's so amazing.
once you start, you can't stop. I feel like because you just want to like know more and your soul just wants to know. And I feel like you find the right modalities at the right time. Like some
Yes.
of the things I've taken, like I start offering it a couple months later and a client's going through whatever. And it's like,
Yeah.
okay, that's why I took this because I can support them in this way now.
Right. Yeah. I love that. Okay. So do you think in this very moment, do you feel like you're living your soul's true purpose now?
I do. I feel like there's always, yeah, I always struggle with the word purpose because I feel like I used to think purpose was a job.
Okay. Okay.
Where now I think our soul purpose is based on just the lessons we're meant to learn and who we truly are. So living from our soul. But do I feel fulfilled? Yes. Is there more that I want to do that I may be blocking myself from? 100%. So I feel like the work's never done there, but I do feel like I am on my path. Do I still question myself, especially with like finances? Every day, as you know, but
Yes.
but
Yes.
then I look back at like how many people I've helped and the messages I get sometimes and just yeah, I don't know. I feel like when you do this work, sometimes you forget because not that it becomes second nature, it's always magical, but you just forget. Like I'm the channel. So a lot of the times when I share messages or guidance, I don't keep it with me because like one, that would be really overwhelming.
Mm-hmm.
Two, again, I'm just the channel. So I say it and then let it
Move
go.
on. Mm-hmm.
So yeah, sometimes I forget, but definitely do feel like I'm doing what I'm meant to be doing.
Yeah. That's, I mean, we know, right, that like the purpose of this life isn't to, it's not about all of the things, right? Like it's enjoying the little moments and like I I see this meme often and it's like if you're able to drive your kids to school in the morning or if you're able to go have lunch with your spouse during the weekday, like that is success,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it's like, wow, that's so true,
I know. Yeah, sometimes
right?
I forget or I take it for granted. Like, yeah, I might not have, a huge savings in the bank, but there is that freedom and that ability to do what I want to do, where I know a lot of people don't have that and they struggle because they're in a situation
Mm-hmm.
that drains them and doing what they don't want to be doing.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Um, okay. Are you able to kind of share like what's changed in your life now that you are really truly living your authentic self? Has there been any changes?
Oh yeah, there's been so many changes. I'm just trying to put it into words. Yeah, there's been a lot. I feel like a lot of good, obviously. I feel like something we learned in yoga and that I can see is like before I used to have high highs and low lows, where now I can be more neutral and
Mm-hmm.
just if, like an example of like 2020 when like shit was hitting the fan and there was chaos everywhere. I was able to just zoom out and just see things for what it was and not get so attached to it.
Mm-hmm.
That's a beautiful gift. Something that I struggle with is like seeing patterns and behaviors in relationships that aren't healthy. And before I used to just be able to turn it off and just like it would still bug me or bother me on some level, but now it's almost like, okay, well, how do I handle it? Like that, there's just more awareness of it. And that sometimes is hard. I've also, have lost friends along the way, just because they're not where I'm at, which is okay. And we just don't have much in common anymore, but it's still heartbreaking. I still miss them. And so, yeah, there's been a lot of good changes. I feel like following your intuition will always lead you to the best places and the best outcomes. Like I shared with you last week, we were traveling, and I've had this one spot in Laguna Beach on my vision board for over a decade.
Yeah.
And I kind of knew where it was, but like I didn't know what that beach was called or anything. And
Yep.
I knew it was by the Montage, but last time we went there, I felt so uncomfortable and I was like, I can't be here. I'm like not rich enough or whatever. So anyways, I was on Pinterest and I was looking at like the best beaches in Laguna Beach, and this one came up and it was like, didn't say anything about the Montage. It was just like, this is what it's called. So I put it in my maps and like it drove us there and it like took us to this other parkade. And then I'm sitting there and I'm like, oh my God, this is the spot that was in my
Yep.
vision. So it was like spirit, your soul, your intuition
Yep.
will always just lead you to magical places when you listen.
Yep.
So yeah, that's been, I don't know, more times than I can count. I've had these amazing experiences, even thinking when we were at Disney, like it was getting really busy. But there was like, I was like, I'm just going to set the intention, whatever ride we're meant to be on, like the wait time is less than 30 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a couple we had to wait, but for the most part, all the busy ones, we would walk by and like the phone would say, oh, a 20-minute wait. So we would just go and like it just worked out perfectly. So a lot of synchronicities.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely. But I feel like the biggest thing is just not being able to, once you are aware of things, you can't go back.
Mm-hmm.
Like you can't,
Yes.
like I don't really drink anymore.
Mm-hmm.
If, I'm out maybe for a concert or I'm on a trip and like go to a winery, I'll have one drink. But like that whole just like, I don't know. I don't know the proper way to say it without being offensive, but just, yeah, I can't do things like that. Even trying to enjoy like a reality TV show, a lot of the times I'm just aware of how it affects my energy, so I can't, and I turn it off. So little things like that, which in the grand scheme of things is for the better, and I don't need to be
Yeah.
doing those things, but sometimes my humanness just wants to be able to shut
You're like,
off.
I just want to watch this show in peace. Oh, I love that. That's funny. Okay, is there anything else that you want to share that I didn't touch upon?
Um, Yeah, what's coming to mind is just sharing about when you're on this path as a mom too, like how much it's helped me. And I truly believe like even though I do this as a business, the real reason why I was guided to all of these modalities and healings and practices is for my kids. So one, I can be a better mom for them, and I don't have to be stressed out and impatient. And not saying that doesn't happen, because obviously I'm human and it does, but I couldn't imagine who I would be as a mom if I didn't have the tools that I have. So yeah, just I feel like it's important. And even looking back at my childhood, I wish that I would have had even like half of the things that I do now, and how much that would have helped me, just growing up, being able to, clear my energy. I feel like the kids nowadays too are so sensitive. So
Mm-hmm.
learning these tools, and they're really easy. Even just having Reiki, right? Like how many times my kids have been sick and they've asked, like, can you please give me Reiki or
Mm-hmm.
reflexology? So yeah, it's just, I feel like at the end of the day, that's why I was guided to do all that I do. And I hope that when they're older, they can take all these tools with them.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. Oh, I
Thank-
love that.
Yeah. Thank
Yay.
you.
You're welcome. Thank you for sharing with us. There was even so much that like I knew, but having known you for so long that I guess I had kind of like forgotten, or like even I mean I knew that you had moved and moved and moved and moved and moved, but like um that like the time, I mean I didn't really know the time frame or like all of those little things, right? So
Yeah.
thank you for sharing.
You're welcome. And if I can share, I just want to share a couple like intuitive stories that are coming up as well, because I think it's
Mm-hmm.
so important. So one that I didn't share was I was probably like 18 or 19. I was driving in the city and it was a red light and there was this big intersection. So cars were coming this way and then I was going straight and the light turned green. And I was going to say for whatever reason, but my angels told me to stop. So I left my foot on the brake and there was cars behind me honking and there was two vehicles to my side and they went and then a car came through the intersection and T-boned them both. So if I wouldn't have went, I would have got hit as well.
Yeah.
So that was crazy. So always just listen to those gut feelings, right? Even if
Yeah.
people are getting mad at you or whatever. Um, yeah. And then the other thing too that's coming up to share is like when you're struggling with a decision, I used to be the most indecisive person ever. I think it's just being a Libra, but yeah, I remember always just having to go to my friends to get advice to make a decision because I could never make my own decision. Asking for help and guidance of like
Mm-hmm.
what is the best possible outcome for me. Please show me a sign to
Yeah.
whoever you believe in, whether that's God, angels, universe,
Yeah.
any other divine beings of light. But yeah, I've had that happen so many times. Like when you were saying the moving, there's been, when we first moved to Fort Sask, there was
Mm-hmm.
three different options. So Luke got offered a job in Slave Lake, in Fort Sask, and in Vancouver within a couple weeks of each other.
Mm-hmm.
And I, in my heart, always wanted to move back to Vancouver.
Yeah.
But my gut was telling me, no, that's not the right spot for you and your family.
Yeah.
And that was hard because my mind was like, no,
Because you're like, but this is it. This is what I want. Yeah.
yeah, it's an opportunity. But yeah, I listened to my gut because at this point there was, it was quite loud. It was
Yeah.
after the spiritual awakening. So yeah, and I can look back and I can see what all of those outcomes would have been. And I'm so glad we chose the one we did because I was still able to be close to my family and like Rhett met his best friend there. And I look back at living there with like fond,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
And then we were leaving, he got a job unexpectedly. I say
Mm-hmm.
unexpectedly, but we know that's never the case. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and being really confused because again, my mind was like, what, but I don't want to move. Like, what are you talking about? Like,
Yeah.
this is I'm raising my family. Unless we're moving to BC, then I'm not moving.
Yeah.
And then there was just like so much surrender. And I remember we put an offer on a house close, probably 5 minutes from where we are right now.
Mm-hmm. I
And
remember all of this.
yeah. And I just had this gut feeling like the area was it, but the house wasn't it.
I remember all of this.
Yeah. So
Yep.
I like, okay, universe, like, and it was a little bit over our budget too. So that would have been
Yep.
a struggle. But I remember just being like, hey, universe, wherever we're meant to be, where I can most be of service
Yep.
and our family will be comfortable, just let us go there. So
Yep.
then we ended up in Penhold and I met
Mm-hmm.
like, one of my dear friends and she's taken Reiki with me and she's just been a good support.
Yeah.
And then I started teaching yoga there. So it was just crazy how it all worked out. And then when this place came available, yeah, I just knew. So
Yep.
again, sometimes you got to be patient. Sometimes you got to just ask for signs and trust your intuition, but
Yeah.
you'll always be led to where you're meant to be.
And sometimes the signs are not always what you want.
No.
No, like that, right? And like even when you're like, I think I'm gonna ask for another sign, and I'm like, I don't know if you should. Like, I'm gonna ask for a sign to your sign. I was like, okay,
Yeah.
right? So
So
I think
that,
that's important too, is like they're not always, it's not, it's not always what we want.
no, because yeah, there was no part of me that wanted to live in Penhold, if I'm being
Yeah,
honest.
right?
I could see why we ended up there. And
Yeah,
now that we're on an acreage, I'm grateful for it. But at the
yeah.
time, it was difficult.
I remember you had told me that we were moving, and the same thing. I wasn't like, I was keen on moving, but I wasn't keen on moving. I wasn't like keen on going to where we are now. And I remember when we were coming to look at houses here, and I had asked for a very specific sign. My sign was, if we are meant to live there, over the course of the 3 hour drive, I will see three deer will appear in front of me. We had
Mhm.
literally just gotten on the highway. Like we were still in Widewater. We had just gotten on the highway and three deer ran across the road. And I was like, okay, well, I want a different sign. That was not it. And then I was like, that was it. I'm like, no, that wasn't it. That was like, we're not even, we haven't even left yet. Like, that's not the sign. And he's like, that's specifically what you asked for.
Yeah, I remember thinking
Um,
that
and
too.
then, things did fall into place. It was like very similar to ours. Like so many things had to fall into place and everything was very last minute, but then somehow everything did actually fall into place. And now, very similar. Like I wouldn't, I, I wouldn't move now. Like we're so happy here. And, um, yeah, it's just funny how, yeah, then you're just like, because you're not expecting those signs, or you're like, I'm not going to get that sign because this isn't what I want. And then the
Mhm.
universe gives you the sign anyway, and you're like, no, that's not it.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
battle of the mind and the soul.
yeah,
But yeah, it's pretty undeniable. I remember doing that too when we were moving. I was like, hey, give me a rainbow if I'm meant to move. And then my son came home with like a rainbow card in his backpack.
yeah.
And I was like, okay. And then
Okay.
same with the Penhold house. There was like a rainbow on one of the doors, like a drawing that
Yeah,
one of the kids drew. So I was like, okay, we're meant
that's
to be
it.
here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I love
So
that. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for sharing.
yeah,
I
thank you.
think your journey and just, um, how you were able to change, not necessarily like your life wasn't on a bad path or anything, but just how you were able to change, your life so drastically, I guess, in a sense, right? And like how amazing that you listened to your intuition and you listened to your guides, and and I had said this to you, like think of how many people that you have helped, right? Like along the course of these 10 years, if anything, that is success,
Right. Yeah.
right?
Yeah, no, I'm grateful. I feel like I was meant to, like my soul chose these lessons, even though they weren't always easy. But I was definitely meant to do and experience everything I
Yeah,
do, the good, the bad, and everything in between.
yeah.
Mhm.
Oh, I love that. Thank you for sharing. I hope
Oh,
everyone enjoyed this interview with Anne. If you have any questions for Anne, you can always leave comments, I think, down below, right? Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Or just reach out on Instagram. It's the same tag as on here. So yeah, thank you, Ashley, for all your beautiful questions.
You're welcome. Thank you for Thank you for allowing me to ask you.
Yeah. Okay, thanks. And thank you for everyone who watches. Bye.
Bye.